hope we will have a smooth 1.5 hours and meaningful discussion on autism spectrum disorder, neurodevelopmental disorders, and most importantly, interventions and how to equip teenagers and adults to live independently, right? So it doesn't matter whether you're a parent, a student, or a practitioner, this information would benefit all of you. So with that, let me introduce to you to the 3 driving force of LemmeLearn: equip, enable, empower. And LemmeLearn is an inclusive vocational training center that helps teenagers and adults to be well equipped towards independence in society. So as a practitioner myself, I know most of the time the focus can be on assessment, diagnosis, and early intervention. So we always hear about early intervention program, but as a parent, and I am a parent of a special needs child, and I know that nothing gives us hope as parents like knowing that there are avenues for my child to live independently long after I'm gone. So for that, I would like to take a moment to applaud LemmeLearn for their contribution and work in this sphere. Eileen, you're such an inspiration. Thank you so much for doing what you do. So let me start with just giving you a brief overview of LemmeLearn. So LemmeLearn, the blog, was birthed after Eileen experienced inclusion during her time doing her master's in San Francisco. So she brought this vision back to Malaysia, and after speaking to a lot of parents, realized that resources are really lacking for the adult population, especially the neurodivergent adult population in Malaysia. So she partnered together with Alison, whom she met before, and to create an inclusive vocational training center that aims to allow people who are neurodivergent and who have disabilities to be seen, to be heard, and to be equipped towards independence in society. And so today, I'm very happy to know the team has grown, including well-qualified individuals who are also passionate and share the same values towards the special needs community, and to actually join the quest towards sustainable inclusion. So if this is the first time you are joining us, Reminds talks, and also first time hearing about LemmeLearn, please follow us on Instagram. The QR codes are here, you can scan, and it will also be shared in the chat box. So keep a lookout on that. If you're joining us on your phone, the links will be shared with you in the chat box, so you can add us and follow our updates on Instagram, and you will get a lot more information post this talk and our future talks as well. Okay, so for full disclosure, Remind and LemmeLearn are not business partners, and this is a free talk. It's not an endorsement exercise, but purely an appreciation of work that is done within the neurodivergent community in an effort towards an inclusive society. Okay, so with that, I shall introduce myself. My name is Puveshni Rao. I am a registered clinical psychologist, co-founder of Remind Psychology Center, clinical supervisor, and a coach. And among my many roles that I play in life, right, the most important role to me right now is that I'm a mother of a special needs child. My son Varun was diagnosed as having global developmental delay at 2 years old. And since then, I have been monitoring his progress. I have been looking at what he cannot do. And I have had a strong inclination that he is on the spectrum. But of course, being a mom sometimes it supersedes your professional judgment, and you hope that, maybe it's not true, maybe I'm wrong, right? So while waiting for an unbiased opinion, we have taken him for assessments, reassessments, and I have been looking out at resources, schools, places that can help my child. And since I found out of LemmeLearn, I have been quite reassured to know that I have options in places like LemmeLearn, right? And LemmeLearn is actually based in Penang, but there are many places in KL as well that do this kind of work, but I am not aware of them yet. But I take solace in knowing that there are people like Eileen who are out there who are working towards this course, and that is something that helps me sleep at night, Okay, so that's a little bit about me. And I am very honored to introduce Eileen. Eileen Soon, say hi, everyone.
Hi.
Okay, so Eileen has been an advocate for the inclusion of adults with autism into society. And her organization, LemmeLearn, provides vocational and independent living skills training to adults on the spectrum. And they have been transforming lives in the vicinity of their center in Pulau Tikus into an autism-friendly town by bringing about awareness as their adults with autism work, live, and find community within this area. So Eileen, again, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I am very interested to know your story. How did you get inspired? And yeah, basically a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's really such an honor to be able to be with you guys today and really be able to talk about something that I'm super passionate about. So thank you for having me. Yeah, how a lot of people ask, why I got into this field and what is the driving force behind what I do, especially LemmeLearn, and why we chose this inclusive approach. So yeah, I have been always interested in education, but when I stumbled upon special education, I think there's a lot of things that really resonated with me. I think just being able to understand that there are people who struggle, and I think when I see someone who struggles through school or maybe academics or trying to achieve and maybe feel a bit disappointed, feel that they have been a disappointment to others, I feel like it's something that resonates with me. So I think when I got into education and found special education, I was very passionate about it. And I felt like this is something that I would love to be able to do more of. So I've been in the field of special education for 17 years. It's been a while. And I first off started in an international school setting. So I came back and I was working at international school at the special needs department. So at that point, we were catering to students with learning disabilities, so those with ADHD and dyslexia, as well as students on the spectrum. And after 5 years in that international school, I thought, I really want a challenge. So I went into a center specifically for children with special needs. And in this center, they catered to a range of ages from toddlerhood all the way up to teenage years. And those students were definitely, I got what I was asking for. The students that I taught there were definitely much more impacted by their disability. And that did then cause me to realize that there's a lot of things that I don't know. So that's when I decided to go to further my studies, go get my master's, and I went to San Francisco. So around about that time, I think it was also the time when Rosma was announced her huge budget to really enhance the to create, I think, a special needs center that was, world-class, state-of-the-art. And I remember very clearly that she went to the Bay Area to go and visit this center there, very close to San Francisco, where I was at. So I went with the mindset of wanting to also go and visit this place and learn about how to create this state-of-the-art, world-class center that can really meet the needs of all students. When I went there, I started having this conversation with my professor. And I said, my prime minister's wife is here. I mean, she was here and she wanted to visit this place. It's a center. And I told them the name of the center, and my professors were like, what? I don't know of this place. And then they got pretty sobered, and they were like, you do know that research shows that inclusion is a lot better than keeping them in a place on their own, right? I mean, and they started to talk about the research that they have been doing, and they are both inclusion researchers who have spent many years just thinking about how things can be better for individuals with special needs. And so they were like totally talking about inclusion, and they said, you know, really, this is the best setting for them is when they are in society, when they are given a fair chance at trying different things. And at that moment, I was really still hesitant at whether or not this inclusion thing can work. But I started to, during my time there, started to see people with disabilities really break boundaries that I thought were there for them. Like there are people with disabilities who would be in university, enrolled in university, and these are people who with quite severe physical disabilities. I saw people with disabilities taking public transportation around. They would be out getting jobs. I myself worked at the disability department at the university and really got to see the range of disabilities and how there was no limitation placed upon them. And some of them would live independently. Some of them would get married and start families. Like there was nothing to stop them from being able to live their life and have the same rights as everybody else. So when I came back in 2016, which you already shared, I met up with some parents, and they were parents of the students that I taught before. And at that point, they were already 18, 20 years old, and the schools were already doing a lot of things and teaching them repeated things over and over again. And they were really asking like, what's next? Right. So yes, together with, I was thinking, how would this look like if, let's say, Malaysia were to have the same type of inclusion that they witnessed in the US? How much more opportunity would open up for our people who are neurodiverse specifically? Right. So that time, myself and my co-founder at the time, Alison, we both had the same vision, and we decided to start LemmeLearn and just give it a try. And that's kind of where we're at. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It's very inspiring. And I think it always is about making a difference, right? And I think when you're talking about an inclusive society cannot be achieved alone.
No.
When you're talking about people there who live and get married and be part of communities, it's also about communities watching out for each other. And I think that's a very, very important concept that we as a society really need to drive in, because it's not about them alone, not about only their families, but also all of us. What are we doing to be inclusive in society? So with that, right, I think it's a very inspiring start to this whole session today. And I'm really, really interested, because we had a few questions come in, right? And even with the questions, I would really want to know, what are some success stories? Because I think it's really great to start off on a high and on a hopeful note. So before we go into the nitty-gritty of how it is done, I want to know the end, right? So I want to know, what are some success stories that you have seen, witnessed, and experienced with LemmeLearn, and what have there been, and also what are some big wins in Penang for the Penang community, especially in Pulau Tikus, where you have started your inclusive society, right? So just share some of them with us.
Yeah. There are so many stories. But let me maybe share with you a story about how inclusion has not only changed the life of one of our students, but also has been able to change the life of the community that he is in as well. So there is this guy, his name is Daniel, and he has been our student for several years. He's pretty quiet. He's not really a very communicative type of guy, but he's able to talk. It just takes a while for us to understand him. If you don't understand him, you wouldn't be able to understand what he's trying to say. So we got him a place. He had been in different job placements already for a work exposure. And finally, we found this place where the owner said, owner of an Indonesian restaurant, said that he was willing to hire somebody with a disability, so someone with an OKU card. So we thought, okay, I think Daniel's ready. So we put him there, and we started to job coach him. So we would go in on a weekly basis. Every time he was there, we would go in to be able to understand the workflow and to help him out. And I will not forget the day when we started to realize, okay, he's a little bit slower. He's not really able to do the same amount of things that the other workers are doing. And the owner came in, and the owner was really like, he has his good days and not so good days. So I guess that day I got him on a not so good day. And I was trying to explain to him that Daniel will need a little bit more time with some of the tasks. And immediately he said to me, you know, I treat everyone the same. I pay them the same rate, and I'm going to treat them the same. And you guys should too. You know why? Because you all, I think when you think that they should be given special treatment or different privileges, you're actually making excuses for that. And so he just basically said that when you make excuses for them, they're not going to grow. So stop making excuses for them. I'm not going to. I'm going to treat him the same way like how I treat everybody else. So when we heard that, we were actually really worried that he wouldn't be able to stay in that job for long, because the owner himself was not very open to any kind of accommodation. And we thought, okay, well, all right, we'll still keep on trying. We continued to job coach him. So we made sure that we made visuals for this guy. Like his job was behind the bar, so you had to make drinks. And these are the special drinks that this restaurant serve. So when it is busy, the owner expects him to double the recipe, triple the recipe, quadruple the recipe. He just expected him to adjust himself according to the workload, which we knew would be a slight challenge for Daniel because he's just one track in his way of handling things. So it's all right. So we decided to make visuals, and we made like a visual for single recipe and a double recipe. And then we told him that if there were a lot of people, you just double the double recipe. And he actually started to get it. So we also built a good relationship with the co-workers around him. So the co-workers are really kind, really sweet. They would always praise him. Oh, Daniel bagus. Daniel selalu mau buat, dia buat bagus. So the co-workers were actually really kind and didn't mind helping him out. But it was the boss's mind that we had to change. So we tried our best. We communicated with the family, and the family came in, and the family side, they supported by like the mom would talk to him all the time and ask him how his day went, how many customers came in, and the mom would try to help him understand that the more customers there are, the better it is, because you're bringing value to this company. And so he started to celebrate when there were more customers coming in, rather than like, you know, some workers would say, oh, today was such a busy day, it's full house, I didn't even get a chance to rest. He saw things differently because his mom was constantly talking to him about how we want this place to flourish, because then you will have more things to do, you will have higher pay perhaps. So he started to see things from a different perspective. And the mom would even ask him to note different things like, oh, what does your coworker like to eat, or what does your boss like to eat? So once he told the mom that the boss brought in layered cake and cheer everyone. So then he said, this is the boss's favorite food. So one day when they stumbled upon layered cake, the family stumbled upon layered cake, got him to buy it and give it to his boss. And that small gesture really meant so much to his boss that it really touched his heart. And and the boss was like, wow, he remembered that I like layered cake. So it's like the small little things that the family did to support. They also, she made sure that he always communicated when he was going to be late, when he would be absent, apply for leave ahead of time. she made sure that there was good ethics that was being, good work ethics that were being built within him.
Yeah.
And so, and whenever they had guests come in, they would bring them to the Indonesian restaurant to really support that restaurant as well.
Yeah.
So with the job coaching support from our side, the family support, there was one day when there was a huge like office politic thing that happened, and all of the workers, several workers decided to resign at the same day. And so Daniel was not part of any of this office politics. And it was on that day when the boss started to see that he is such a valued worker. Like yes, he's faithful. He continues to do his work, even though maybe there's a lot of politics going on. It doesn't affect him. He doesn't participate in any of that. He comes in, he does his work well. And one day the boss told the mom, I would rather hire a group of Daniels than to hire neurotypical. So I think this really,
I don't think it gets better than that.
yeah. So I mean, from someone who was so against any kind of accommodation or any kind of change to suit a person who was neurodiverse, to being so supportive, and now he understands Daniel a lot more. He takes the time to understand how he functions, and yeah, he values him. So I think it speaks volumes about inclusion. And Daniel has really learned to problem solve. He has learned to be able to work well under pressure. He's really increased in his communication as well. So, and multitasking, he's better at multitasking because he has this real life job that he has to do. So I think this is really something that every time I think about this story, I am so proud of the fact that when an individual with autism is out in the workplace, even though it might seem to be so such a harsh world out there, but with the right supports, things can happen and things can open up, and the right opportunity, more opportunity can even open up for them, and they can be valued just like us.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And I think it's, instead of calling them, we often as society have labels, right? And we call them disabled, or we call them, like, we have the OKU card, which basically means orang kurang upaya. But actually they are differently able. Like, I'm pretty sure a lot of neurotypical people would have been part of the office politics, usually, right? But because they view the world in a different way, it gives them that ability to step out of it, to stay out of it, and not, be a part of this toxicity that's going on. I think what stood out, it's a very heartwarming story, and what stood out to me is that again and again, it shows that it's not just one person's responsibility. It was the parents, it was LemmeLearn, it was the boss, it was the co-workers.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just, and what united all of you was the kindness, just to be kind and just to give them an opportunity. I think that is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. Right? And I think in terms of, because we are talking about neurodevelopmental challenges, right? So I think for those of you who are new, who are not accustomed to this topic, we just want to do a brief overview on when we're talking about differently abled individuals, and specifically focus on neurodevelopmental challenges. There are many, right? This is just like a brief summary of some of the neurodevelopmental challenges that people can be born with. So these are things that people are born with. It's not something you do to them most of the time. Of course, there are some accidents and stuff like that that could cause certain things, but most of the time, these are neurodevelopmental challenges, which means it's genetic. They are born with it, and therefore you can't really cure it, but you learn how to manage and live with it. Live with your differently abled skills within society. So I think because this is Autism Awareness Month, we want to specifically focus on autism. And to be honest, when I was doing my training, I am a registered clinical psychologist. And when I was doing my training, a lot of times we were told autism spectrum is on a sphere, right? So you are either you have less autistic traits or you have more autistic traits. You are either high functioning or low functioning. But more and more as you work with individuals with autism, you realize that not that two people with the same diagnosis, let's say you have autism spectrum disorder level 1, which is the most like neurotypical people, like most the nearest to the neurotypical community. Two people with the same diagnosis may not even appear the same way, may not present the same symptoms, and they may have different intensity of all these different symptoms that you see on the screen. Their social, the level of social interaction that they can have and they want to have, their interests, the repetitive behaviors they do, the how sensorily sensitive they are. All of this can be different from each person to person, and of course, between different diagnoses that a child can have, this can also be very different, right? So because of that, it's very, very important how we view these people. Representation matters on how we view neurodivergent community, because we cannot just put them in a box and say, okay, these are all neurodivergent people, therefore this is what they can do, this is what they cannot do, because like what Eileen's stories tell us, we can be quite surprised at what they are capable of doing, right? So we have heard what LemmeLearn does, we have heard success stories, we are psyched up, and I am very excited to know what can parents or professionals do to actually get into this vocational training place, right? To LemmeLearn. Like, what do we do to prepare our teenagers or adults before coming? Is there any steps we need to take prior to this? Maybe you can advise us on that.
Yeah, this is a good question. I think there are a lot of people a lot of parents, especially of younger children, who do ask this question. At a very practical level, I think it's important for them to start doing. We see a huge amount of progress when they are given real life hands-on tasks to do. Just the connections that are being made, the neurons that are being fired, the growth that we see is huge. So and so at home, I think if they can start doing things for themselves, as simple as like filling up water bottles in the morning, or being able to do their laundry, make their bed. I think things like that really, really go a long way. Yeah, so
So
sorry.
basically making them be independent as much as possible.
Yes.
And not like mollycoddling them. Oh, my baby can't do this. My
Yes.
child can't do that.
Yeah. And it can start really young. Like, it doesn't have to start when they are in their teens. It can start from the time they are toddlers. They could take something to the trash. They could take their diaper and dump it into the trash, or gather up some things to put into their bag when they're going out. So all of this really starts to allow their minds to plan, and it increases their what we call executive functioning skills, because oftentimes there are gaps between the executive functioning skills. So if they start early, I do think that it does make a huge impact on their later performance in life. So yeah, definitely all of the practical things, anything that you can think of that they can do, or if they show interest in doing, just let them do it. Yeah, they might want to carry your groceries that is pretty heavy. Take out the breakable stuff and let them carry it, because they are slowly going to, they're slowly going to make connections that this goes here, and some things go into the fridge and some things go into the cupboard. And all of these connections are like, don't underestimate how important they are.
Yeah.
But
so basically just do what you would usually do for neurotypical children.
absolutely.
Right? Don't treat them differently.
Yeah, and invite them to do it. I mean, you're not going to force them to do it if they don't like it, or if they are not interested or unable to. You're not going to make them feel bad about not doing it, but invite them to be part of it. And I think you'd be surprised at how much they will grow through all of this.
Okay.
At a foundational level, though, often, if you're talking about the flip side, who are the people that we would struggle to take in? I think at a foundational level, I think emotional regulation is a huge one, a huge piece. Because the ability to calm themselves down, to be able to stay calm, or at least be able to react with smaller reactions, is something that is really important. Due to the fact that, you know, if they are really in this cycle of aggressive behavior and unpredictable behavior, it will require additional support when you're taking them out to ensure the safety of the individual on the spectrum, as well as the safety of the people around them. So I think if we can find tools to help with emotional regulation and help them to regulate their own emotions and give them the strategies and the tools themselves, that is really probably the foundation for being able to have them out in inclusive settings more often.
All right. So what you're trying to say is that prior to coming, so because this is only focused on vocational training and inclusive living, independent living, so they need to come with certain skills already. So this cannot be the first place they're coming in their life, right? So there has to be, early intervention has to happen different depending on their needs, depending on what they need, what symptoms they show, and what needs they have. And the most important part is the emotion regulation. And once that is done, then, and they're ready to go to the next step, and then the vocational training would make sense.
Right, definitely. Yeah, we will not be able to do a lot of vocational training if emotional regulation is not strong. Yeah, and then of course compliance to instruction, which kind of falls under that as well. And then of toileting would be one, and I think we will talk about this a little bit later. But I think especially for grown men, it's a little bit harder if the settings are mainly women. Because
which oftentimes it is, right? Like
yes,
the helping profession,
yeah. So I think as a grown adult man, the toileting aspects need to be there so that they're able to take care of themselves and not require a female or somebody else, even a male, to come in to always help. That poses a little bit of a risk to the individual as well.
All right. Yeah, understand. So these are things that I'm guessing that prior to coming here, because they need to have had help before, is there an age range in which you start taking individuals in, and like a maximum age?
We don't have well, okay, we start off with 18 and above because we do go out and we do work, so we need to ensure that the individuals are of working age. And in terms of maximum age, I don't know.
What has been the maximum age that you have?
We have a 41-year-old enrolled with us. And we recently got an inquiry from a 51-year-old. And I met him. He does seem to be pretty keen. Even though he's 51, he does not look 51 at all. Maybe the way that he carries himself, he looks like he could be a 30-year-old. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. And I would be curious to know also at which point does the brain, you know, do we ever reach a peak in our brain capacity to learn and grow, or does it continue, or does it degenerate with age? I'm not too sure.
Okay, I believe we can always learn.
Yeah,
but I think in Asian communities we are told, I'm old already, I cannot learn.
Yes.
That's like I believe that's a self-imposed restriction.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you believe, then that will be your reality. Yes.
So I'm pretty confident that we can learn and relearn at any age. And I think it's really important to learn from this individual who's 51 years old, who's coming in for vocational training, right? So I think it's great that you have made that kind of impact. So I think what we're trying to show here is, because they need to come in at 18, so that means there has to be work done before. Therefore, assessment, early diagnosis, early intervention is super important.
Yes.
So we're going to go through some of the questions that came in through our Google link. And there was a question on how usually does assessments run for people on the spectrum. So this is something that I have told my students, and that I used to teach and lecture on this topic. So with assessments, it is not about us going in and telling the clinical psychologist that, or the testing counselor or whoever professional that you are meeting, that, hey, I want to be diagnosed as having ADHD or autism. So test me for that, right? So we cannot run assessments only for a specific mental health issue or neurodevelopmental issue that you think you have or you think your child has. How it happens is it has to be comprehensive, meaning you come in and you meet your professional, you understand, you help them understand what are the challenges your child is facing. And once they have done the whole clinical intake interview, and they should ask you not only your symptoms, but also what's the family dynamics like? What are their social skills? What are their strengths? What are their challenges? What is the personality like? Because I get a lot of parents who come in and talk about everything the child can do. And then after some time, we have to take a pause and be like, okay, let's now talk about what can your child do? What are their strengths? What are you proud of them for doing? And they think so much, but then they will tell you things like, oh, he's very helpful, or she's very kind to other people. That is a strength. But unfortunately, in our society, we don't see that as a strength because that's not something you can get A's for, or A pluses for, or A plus stars for, right? So to recognize that person within their context, get as much information, comprehensive information, and then the professional, the psychologist needs to look at the data that they have collected. These are the subjective data, meaning from the parents, from the teachers, from the individual themselves, if they are able to speak and articulate, and then come up with a set of assessment tools that you need. And the term that we use is to rule out autism. So let's say you come in and you tell me that I think my child is on the spectrum. So I'm not going to only do tests to check for autism. I need to look at the data and look at, okay, it could be autism, it could be something else. So how do we assess comprehensively to rule out autism? And by the process of ruling out autism, I can look at other possible diagnoses that may be possible, and then rule each one of them out. So that is the entire process, very simplified process. And once that is done and you have your objective data, you have all this data from standardized testing. So standardized testing means it's not just tests you get online, right? A lot of people come to me and say, oh, I've done this test on, whatever, BuzzFeed, and they think I have ADHD. So I think I have ADHD. It does not work that way. Standardized testing means you have professionals, psychometricians who have developed this test, who have run it through various rigorous testing and validation studies, reliability studies, and then they have made it fit to be used with this specific population, right? So you use those assessments, and then the individual, the therapist, will sit down and look at all the data and see what is the best fit of the diagnosis for this individual and recommend interventions for them. Okay, so of course, in this process, there'll be observations, interviews with the teachers, interviews with anyone who comes into contact with this particular individual or child. So that's the whole process of the assessment and what happens, right? So we will be giving you, I would be offering everyone here, if you know somebody who suspects neurodevelopmental challenges in their child, you can book a 15-minute consultation with me and it's free, completely free, just to see if you need to go for an extensive screening and diagnostic process, or it's something that you can wait out and observe and what to observe. So you can, for parents who cost is an issue, we will talk about cost later. So if cost is an issue and you just want to know, do I need to do something? Then come in, wait up for the QR code for the 15-minute free consultation. You can book your appointments and I will have a chat with you to help you navigate through this. Okay, so that's the first question. The second one was, are personality disorders more common amongst those on the spectrum? So Eileen, have you come across people who have come in with a personality disorder diagnosis as well?
Personality disorder, no, but like comorbid with other anxiety disorders, obsessive compulsive disorders, some maybe with a little bit of bipolar or other mental health issues, challenges, yes.
Okay.
Personality disorder specifically, not really.
All right. Okay. So personality disorders are also not easily you cannot just give give people, okay, take it and go, right? You have personality disorder. You need to actually monitor the individual for a long period of time. And if you're working with people 18 years old, they are adults, but they're still young adults. So I would actually give them more time to kind of set into their personality to see, is it a disorder or is it part of the expression of the neurodevelopmental challenges they have? For example, in autism, you have a lot of insistence of sameness. They want routine, they want the same things. Things need to be a certain way. They don't like changes. And this can be very similar to OCPD traits, which is obsessive compulsive personality disorder. So it's very different, right? But it can be very similar. It can be very similar presentations, but the therapist needs to actually go through all the presentation and see, is this really a separate disorder by itself, or is it just part of the autism expression, right? Because we don't want to make people walking encyclopedias of diagnosis, right? I have all these 5 diagnoses and I walk everywhere and tell people I have these 5 diagnoses. I think it is quite like, a human rights violation to do that, unless you specifically need to do that and you have very, very, where the evidence cannot be denied that this is the case. So whether it's common among those on the spectrum, we cannot conclusively say that, but there has been, because of the oddities people show on the spectrum, the odd behaviors they have, or the insistence of sameness they have, the repetitive, restrictive behaviors, it can mimic certain personality disorders, especially cluster A, which are the odd eccentric cluster of personality disorders, or the more like the OCPD, the cluster C personality disorders. Also, now because there's a growing awareness of women with autism. So I remember back when I was doing my practicals, we have to present a case on a client that we have seen. And I'll always remember this client because it was so controversial. The diagnosis was so controversial. So she had social skills deficits. She had repetitive behaviors and very, 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 very autistic-like symptoms, right? But the only thing that was off was that her sexual expression, she was female. So everyone was like, she's female, how can she be autistic? Right? And because she came to see me as a teenager, so they're like, if she's autistic, they would have known it much earlier. So it cannot be autism. So I remember presenting this case to a whole room full of my lecturers and professors, and everyone was like, how is this possible? How is this possible? And I was on the phone with my supervisor. They don't agree. They're going to fail me, right? But moving forward many years later, now there's a growing awareness that there are women who have been living with undiagnosed autism. And because women are socialized differently compared to men, it comes out differently. It's masked. And because they have been living with this masking of their symptoms for so long, it comes out as a personality disorder. They think this person has borderline personality, cannot handle emotions, cannot understand social cues. But perhaps it was just undiagnosed autism, which nobody knew, right? And I think all this is very, very possible. And I've heard clients, parents of clients who they're talking to me, and these clients have told me, I think my father is on the spectrum. Everyone seems to think so, but he has never been diagnosed. And when you talk to the father, he does show symptoms, but because he's functioning, nobody cares about that.
Yeah.
But which is also fine, he's functioning, he's got through life, everything is fine. But sometimes people tend to mask their symptoms for so long that it can come out as a personality disorder. So we need to be very, very particular of our assessment process. And that is why it's very important for you to choose your practitioners, choose the people who are doing this assessment for your family members, for your children, for yourself, so that they're very thorough and they can give you a comprehensive view on not your symptoms, but you as an individual. Because I think that is so, so important. As you are doing this assessment, we are doing this ruling out process, we are assessing somebody, we cannot forget that these are human beings that we're dealing with, human beings with contacts, human beings, families, human beings who have a life outside of this room, and we cannot reduce them to a mere test subject. So I think that's something that we need to be very, very mindful about, right? So talking about all the symptoms and all this expression of criteria for the neurodevelopmental disorders, right? What are some inclusion criteria into the program? Like I know you mentioned earlier, like they need to have emotional regulation, toilet training, and all this stuff, right? But are there like an extent or maybe the intensity of the symptoms that you cannot accept? Like certain neurodevelopmental challenges right now, you are not equipped to serve. Is there anything that we need to be aware of?
Okay. I just want to say that I completely agree with what you're saying about the practitioner doing the assessment. I think we, as people who provide this service as well, can see a huge difference when parents have been to a practitioner who is really able to see them holistically and to be able to do the assessment. The parents themselves are equipped with the knowledge that they need in order to know how to move forward and to choose the right steps to move forward, rather than parents who just want to know, is my child autistic, yes or no, right? And oftentimes those parents who go specifically just for that answer of yes or no, they find themselves in a very hopeless place, because if it's yes, great, I knew it was fine to begin with, and when it's no, it's like, okay, so what are we going to do next? Because they are so fixated on the stereotype of what autism is. So yeah, I completely agree. And I think you see things very holistically, which is something that parents need to need to have when they go for any kind of assessment. So yeah, thank you for sharing that.
No problem.
In terms of the criteria into the program, I think having a very realistic view of where your child is very, very important. So definitely, I think when after the clinical psychologist has been able to do that work and they have gone through maybe putting their child in the right setting for their primary school or maybe secondary school, I think there are also then they would come to us, right? So yeah, I think they need to be able to have like what we mentioned earlier, the emotional regulation, the compliance to instruction, the toileting abilities, and I think mental health wise, they also need to be able to have they have to be able to manage themselves and their mental health, where they are in their mental health journey. So I'm not saying that we do not accept anyone with mental health challenges. We have and still do accept people on the spectrum together with a mental health challenge like depression or anxiety. But it is when the mental health issues balloon up into something so much bigger that they themselves are unable to manage, then I think they would need to focus on their caring for that aspect of themselves first, be it through therapy, medication, counseling, but be able to do that first before enrolling in a vocational training program. Because it's really pointless for you to prepare yourself to go out to work, but you really struggle with crippling anxiety, or really struggle to get out of bed every morning. It's really, really challenging. So I think focus on the mental health first, Then once that is stabilized, then be able to enroll yourselves into a vocational training program.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that. So the early intervention, we cannot stress how important it is, because your child has the best chance of survival only when they're given as early of an intervention as possible. And I think I definitely have come across parents like that who are very fixated on diagnosis. And after the fixation, then it's also about their acceptance of the diagnosis. And I know as a parent also, as a parent who is a practitioner who deals with it was also like a punch to my gut when I kind of started observing the symptoms, like it's a very different kind of feeling. You cannot explain, but you only know it when you experience it. But you need to still remind yourself it's not about you. It's about your child, and it's about what they need to move forward, right? So with that, like, because they need to have gone for other areas of help, etc. And usually it is provided in special needs schools. So what are some advantages and disadvantages, in your opinion, of going to special needs school? How does it help, or are there any disadvantages?
So since my training is a lot in inclusion, there are, I would push for inclusion if it were possible. So I would push for an individual to be in as mainstream a setting as possible if this was available for them, and if that mainstream setting is a good one, something that is a place that is supportive, a place that will provide accommodation, and a place that will be able to help this individual grow. Yeah, but if they're unable to find a place that is able to provide this for them in the mainstream setting, and there's a lot of bullying, there's a lot of misunderstandings between classmates and teachers, and it's just so difficult for your child to be accepted in that setting, then I would definitely opt to go for a special needs school that is, nurturing and able to provide for your child's needs. Yeah, I don't think it benefits. I wouldn't push for inclusion just for the sake of pushing for inclusion, because we actually have a student who is enrolled with us, and he was bullied throughout all of his primary school, all of his secondary school. He was actually beaten up in school, and the parents didn't know how to handle it, because they felt he was also at fault for being the one to tell on people in class, because people with autism just are so black and white sometimes. So he was just very much telling on his friends, and couldn't get the nuances of social life. Yeah. So he was always also the target of bullying, and it will take him a while to actually come out of the trauma that he has experienced. So in that scenario, definitely opt for a good, healthy special needs school rather than a mainstream school that is not going to benefit.
So I think, like I have had I've had exposure, like with my son, right? I have had exposure of sending him to a mainstream daycare where they picked up this behaviors that he was showing, and they kept telling us that he's very obsessed with certain things, and this is what he does. He does not like to be included in play with everybody. And I am very grateful that even though they were not an inclusive school, I think a lot of times we think inclusive equals to mainstream, but it's not. Right? Inclusive means you have the ability to include these differently able children into your curriculum, and you find ways to help them integrate with everybody. So they learn together, they help each other. And I think together, it also creates awareness among other children that there are people who are differently able, and we need to be kind to them. So I think kindness needs to come young, and that is a ground for training, right? But I was very appreciative that this play school, even though they were mainstream, but they picked up this science because the teachers were trained in early education. and they had interns and stuff. So they picked it up and they said, I think you need to send him for assessment. I think we noticed this. We noticed play is a bit lacking. He does not like to engage. And so then we moved him to a special needs school. And that has been his favorite. Like, he just lights up in this school and he loves it. He loves his teachers. He has such an amazing connection to them. And I'm very, very grateful. And I think I can't stress enough. I mean, when you're talking about your story about this child who's been bullied, and I think that is, as a parent, that's my biggest fear, right? Like, my child may get bullied, and nowadays there's very scary stories about children dying from bullying. So, and what more if this child does not even know how to stand up for himself, does not even know why they're getting punched, does not know anything, and this happens to them. So the advantages was that they were very good at, teaching skills, training him, making him sit down, do work, engaging in play. They did all of that. It was amazing. And every time they tell us about his progress, we're like, are you sure it's the same child? Are you talking about my son?
At the special needs school or the mainstream?
Special needs school.
At the special needs school. Okay.
So we will be like, are you sure it's him? Because at home he's like, it's a safe place, right? So he's not going to follow all this routine. But in school, he was like this A student who does everything the teacher asks him to do and follows everything. So that was great. But the disadvantage was that because in that school, he was actually much better than everyone else, the teachers then were worried that he may have reached his threshold.
Yeah.
He needs more stimulation now to learn more, because at this place, because he's better than everyone else, he may not be benefiting as much. And I'm very thankful that they were open and honest about that, because sometimes people just keep you in for your money. That can happen as well. That's just the harsh reality, right? So there are advantages, there are disadvantages, especially if you don't find a right school and the values of the school does not match your values or what you want for your child, then you need to be very aware of their curriculum, their teachers, how are they attending to problematic behaviors, how are they finding solutions for problematic behavior, are they hitting your child, are they shouting at your child, what are they doing, right? So I think all of this is very, very important for you to look at, because if you think your goal is mainstream, there can also be this term I learned about, mainstream fatigue. Because you force them into mainstream, you're not accommodating the way they learn. And when you're not accommodating that, they get very, very fatigued by the whole learning process. So pushing your child to mainstream may work for some children, but may also be unhelpful for others. So you really need to be very, very cognizant of these things.
Right.
Right?
And also it could be even a season, like a season as well. As one season, they could need that special needs school to really get them, build their confidence, help them to feel at ease in a learning environment together with other children. But then maybe the stretch can come later on in another setting that is more suited to them, like a homeschool setting or any kind of other more academic setting that could stretch them slightly more. So yeah, that could be also an option as well.
So it's never just take it for granted, I send you to this school and that's done, right? No. You have to constantly monitor. And that is where the role of family and support system comes in. And it's super, super important. And I can't stress this enough for anyone, regardless of whether you're neurodivergent or you're neurotypical. The role of family and support system in helping you manage your mental health issues or your neurodevelopmental issues is paramount, right? So how can families support this when they have come into vocational training? What are the support needed from family?
Yeah, we work really closely with our parents, the parents of our students. We try our best to get them on board. Definitely when they are aligned with us, we do see a huge progress when we'll have families who will tell us, my child is not gonna do the laundry, but if you guys give it as homework,
They will do.
he will do it because he's got the little he's got the little tracker to fill in, and he's gonna have to give it to the teacher whom he really likes. So he's going to perform, and that's great. So I think families being able to catch what we are wanting and to be able to implement certain things at home is really, really key. But support systems too. I think like support systems, we work really closely with a psychologist that sees our students, and our students are older, but they still do see a psychologist every month, sometimes every fortnightly, just to talk through, or for the psychologist to be able to understand some of the inferential, like work on inferential thinking with some of them. And we work very closely with that psychologist. And once we're able to really make it very multidisciplinary and everyone is connected and helping one another, we really see a huge progress. So huge importance.
I think throughout the lifespan, right, of this person, you need a multidisciplinary team support, and it may not be as heavy throughout, but as and when they need, because as life goes on, challenges can change, right? And they may need this extra support. And in order to support them, parents need to be supported. And when you talk about neurodevelopmental challenges, everyone just zeroes in on the child. But a lot of time, you need to learn the skills. You need to care for yourself because you're the best chance your child has. If you don't take care of yourself, you let the ball drop, it can be disastrous for your child. So you need to take care of yourself. You need to be supported in this journey. And Eileen has actually shared with us her online parent support program, which is the first steps to get your adult with autism to be independent. And the link is also given in the chat box. So register your interest by scanning this QR code. And if you miss it and you think it's really important, please get in touch with us or get in touch with Eileen, and I'm sure she'll be able to give you the link as well. So parent support program, whether you're parents yourself or your practitioners, when you are dealing with a child with neurodevelopmental challenges, you're dealing with the entire family, the entire system. So every single member in that system needs support, and you need to be very, very mindful of how are they doing. Because if the parents are not emotionally regulated, there's no way that they're emotionally regulating the child. There's no way they're modeling this behavior. So they would bring, sometimes I learned this from a senior therapist. They said, you know, people bring their children to us like we are a workshop to fix cars. Like, here, take my child, fix my child. But it's not. They are human beings, and human beings exist in systems. That means the system needs to be very healthy, very emotionally regulated, very grounded for the child to learn the skills and to move forward. So before thinking about working with your child, find help for yourself, because that is going to be very important, because you are your child's anchor. So as practitioners, I hope that all of us are also mindful of the fact that parents need support, and in our intervention, we also not neglect parents, right? So with that, we have another question, right? I think how to manage the difficult emotions. The simple answer is, for me, you as a parent need to manage your emotions first. So I can share that on a good day, so I'm not perfect, I'm only human, I try my best. Sometimes I mess up, but even when I mess up, I need to find it within myself to forgive myself and bounce back again. And I think I'm blessed because I work in the industry. I have friends from the industry. I have my partners who would remind me, it's okay to be human, just do better, right? So when he's having a tantrum or a meltdown, not a tantrum, a meltdown, and he's screaming and he's shouting. And I remember once we were in the middle of Chili's, and I don't know what was wrong. You know, he just started screaming and shouting, and everybody's looking at us. And you can start feeling your face growing hot. You can feel your heartbeat increasing, and every fiber of your being is telling you to scream at this child. But I can tell you with full confidence, as a parent, as a practitioner, that is not going to work, because this child does not know why you're shouting at them. And what that will do is kind of aggravate that situation, because the energy in that space now, your child is angry, you are angry, it's just compounded, and it's just a volcano that's going to erupt, and nobody is going to come out of that looking good. So in order to manage that, if the child is shouting, they are not hurting themselves, they are safe, and they are in a safe space, they cannot hurt themselves, let them shout. Just regulate your emotions. And I've done this. I've just sat beside my child, just looked at him and taken deep breaths myself to calm myself down. And somehow, it almost like magic, he will eventually mirror. And when you are not shouting, you are not getting aggravated, eventually they calm down. So I think that is something we need to manage. And in order to do this, I cannot teach you the skills, or nobody can teach you the skills on a webinar in a short period of time, because it's years of unlearning, unpacking, relearning. And that is something, that is why the parent support group, or having a therapist to help you, having a coach to help you deal with your emotions, is very, very important. And the next question, how to reduce the guilt feeling of not practicing hard enough with my autistic kid. We all have that. I have that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it is the reality. We have to work, support our families, but while doing that, we may come home tired. You may come home stressed out. You have other responsibilities. You have other children to look at. And sometimes you're not practicing hard enough. But what hard enough means is very subjective, right? The idea is you keep trying. You can only be a trying parent. You cannot be a perfect parent, and you cannot reduce the guilt. The guilt is a reflection of how much you care about your child and how aware you are about what you need to do for your child. So you cannot make it go away. I don't think it should go away, because the guilt, my guilt, reminds me that I have a responsibility. And so when I'm reminded of my responsibility, I acknowledge that I'm busy, I acknowledge that it's hard, but I also find ways of doing at least a little bit. I have to be honest, I can't do everything all the time, but I can do some things some of the time. And that also makes a difference, right? And that is my challenges. But I just wanted to know from your point of view, Eileen, what are some challenges within the program that people face, right? Because the duration I don't know how it works. Like, is there a fixed duration for everyone? Like, you come into this training, 1 year, you graduated, you can work forever. What is the duration and what are the challenges?
Yeah. No, we don't have a time frame, although we have recently started a program that is 8 months to prepare an individual for work. Like, we call it a 8-month work prep program, but it is our pilot program, and we are yet to see how 8 months can shape individuals. But we're also very picky with who we take in for this particular 8-month program. But I think in terms of the general program, the duration will vary based on the individual, how they are when they come in, the skill sets that they have already, and also the support of the parents, and how fast they're making certain connections and how fast they're able to progress in terms of the skills that they are picking up. Yeah, there are a lot of different challenges that will come about. We have had students who look really come in looking very promising, and as I mentioned, as we talked about earlier, due to a mental health issue, they have had to then drop out because there was a trigger and they were not aware, and we were all not aware of that trigger, and that caused the individual to just spiral downward. And I think sometimes these are things that are really discouraging, but with parental support, we are able to then identify the small changes in the individual even before they reach that point of spiraling down. And there are a lot of different little challenges here and there that we definitely face. Yeah, and one of the things that you were mentioning earlier, which helps us even as practitioners and service providers, is really the ability to, which I'm learning myself with my own son, but also with the students, is the ability to repair and ability to be able to talk through things and reflect both ways on myself. We're just because we are in a position of authority does not mean that we're always right, and to open up the possibility that we may have done something that has hurt the individual, and for the individual to also be open to share what are their true challenges and not shut them down and say, no, that's not right, that's not true, but to really allow them to share and open up this open conversation. This has really been something that we are learning at this point in time. So for myself, also learning to not react. I think sometimes we have a certain threshold and we think, yeah, okay, I'm gonna give you one chance, and then the second chance, and the third chance. And once you've crossed this one line, I'm gonna come down hard and I'm going to give you an ultimatum. If you don't work on this, or if you don't change this, then these are the consequences that are going to follow. And that used to be the way that I would handle certain things. But now we're really, due to different things that has happened, and our team, as we reflect through certain situations, we start to stop and we start to think, okay, is this the best way of handling? How are we equipping the individual with skills and strategies to handle these situations? And are we also modeling for them how to regulate ourselves and how to communicate well, clearly, and to understand and process through the whole thing that has happened? So, yeah.
Yep. And I think it's not about how many chances I've given you. It's about dealing with the problem as it happens in the present moment, because the triggers can be very different.
Yeah.
And to open to understand what is this person's current challenge. And that's also modeling, right? It's modeling conflict management, which is also a very important skill to be able to take perspectives, which sometimes people with on the spectrum may not be able to do, just because the theory of mind limitations, they're not able to do, but we can try to model these behaviors to manage the challenges that we face. So to summarize, the duration can vary, but you guys are trying to bring it to an 8-month program, right? And whatever challenges that comes up within that, obviously there will be with a lot of idiosyncrasies. So that is also managed by modeling healthy relationships, healthy social skills.
Yeah, but the 8-month program is only for certain individuals who we feel would be able to fit into that time frame. If not, it does go on. Yeah, it does vary.
All right.
Yeah.
So then we have a question about ABA, which is a very researched and leading intervention for autism spectrum disorder. And I think the question is, how do you feel about ABA intervention for autistic children? And also, does ABA aim to change autistic children behavior, making them look normal, or is it more than that? Okay, so maybe for those of you who don't know, I'm going to explain. ABA is not only for people who have who are on the spectrum. ABA is a intervention, a behavioral intervention that can be used to change any behaviors at all, even for neurotypical individuals. You can use applied behavioral analysis to actually look at the ABCs of your behavior. What's the antecedent? What's the behavior, and what are the consequences? So the idea is, if this behavior is, you want to increase the possibility of a behavior repeating, you reinforce the behavior when it is shown, and you prime, like you look at antecedents. When does this behavior usually happen? When the behavior happens, you reinforce them. And because the reinforcement, they do it again. And that's how you increase behaviors, right? And vice versa is true. So that applied behavioral analysis concept is then used to work with autistic children to help them learn behaviors that they may be lacking, right? So ABA has a lot of support because it's behavior and you can easily research it, you can easily quantify it, you can easily break it down, and it has shown a lot of promise and a lot of changes in children. But whether ABA is right for your child, for your family, that is a conscious decision that you need to make, looking at the pros and cons of the intervention itself. So in Malaysia, from what we have surveyed, from what I have surveyed as a parent, I know that ABA treatments can go up from 6,000 to 10,000, right? Or even more, because it's very, very costly. It's very difficult to get trained professionals. I'm sure there are a lot of more people who are being trained in it, but at the moment, there is a dearth in numbers. So because they're very hard to get professionals, the cost can be very high. And some criticism against it is that it makes behaviors look very robotic, right? So whether it makes your child look normal or not, first of all, I don't agree with making people look normal, because who is normal? Like, I don't think I'm normal, right? We all have our quirks, we all have our behaviors, things that are different, and they are differently able, they do things differently. That does not mean they're not normal, right? So I think we need to be very, very careful of how we label people and how we view them, because if you're saying we're going to make them normal, that means they're not normal right now. That's not meeting them where they are. So I think we need to be very cognizant about that. It does help change behaviors, but there are also a lot of other evidence-based techniques or evidence-based therapies or modalities that can be used to manage autistic people on the spectrum, manage behaviors of people on the spectrum. And Eileen, I looked at your website and you mentioned that there is evidence-based practice for what you guys, the kind of interventions you guys use. So could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I do think that ABA is a good mode of practice, but we have chosen to go down the route of using a relationship-based approach. So we use floor time, which the essence of it is basically just to connect, build a relationship with the person the person with autism, to connect with them, to follow their lead in terms of what they are interested in. So in a, for lack of better terms, maybe just to illustrate, is like to go into their world so that we can draw them to connect with our world as well. So it's I feel like because humans are so multifaceted, there's just so much more to a person than just what you see, and the behavior is somewhat like the surface of the iceberg, or the tip of the iceberg. That's what you see on the top. Underneath are so many other things that drive us, be it our moods, our energy levels, whether we feel, how we feel that day, which can be driven so much by our connections, our relationships. And so I do think that for some individuals, this relationship-based approach is what they need, and that's the one that we have chosen.
Okay, yep. And I think there are many options out there.
Yeah.
You need to speak to your professional and also look at the kind of multidisciplinary team your child needs to achieve the target set for themselves, right? During your assessment period, the recommendation, what is your child's strengths? What are they lacking? What kind of interventions can help them? And then decide based on that, what is suitable for your family, because cost can be a very, very, very practical limitation. It can be very, very expensive. Someone recently told me autism is a rich person's disease or rich person's situation, because sometimes, to be honest, even the diagnostic process, the diagnosis process can cost you thousands, because the tools are not made in Malaysia. The tools need to be imported. So it will cost you a lot of money to get the standardized testing. And that's only the first part. After you get them tested, all the other things also cost a lot of money. So I think keeping in mind that cost can be quite a barrier, right? What would be the range of the range of pricing we can expect from LemmeLearn if we would like to enroll our teenager or adult child in your program?
Yeah, it would be between the range of about 2,000 to 3,000, 1,500 to 3,000, depending
A
on
month.
the yes, depending on the enrollment.
Okay. Yep. And so this is something that the reason why you need to be very, very aware of this, because this is about long term. It's
Mhm.
not something that people like to come and ask like, how many sessions do they need, right? So that they like to plan it out. But unfortunately, this is a lifelong journey. It is learning skills in a different on a in a different kind of skills for to be included in a community that's not set up for them. So sometimes we need to acknowledge that there will be cost involved, and we want to find a place that we can sustain, because it does not help to say, okay, I can do this, I'm going to put them into the best schools, and then within 2 months you're like, this is too much, I have to take them out. And that causes a lot more stress for the child and for you, because there's a lot of shifting going around and it's not healthy. And before we end, right, I want to talk about some red flags to look out for. And as parents or family members or some people who work with people who on the spectrum, you are actually prime target for a lot of scams, right? People will come and sell you supplements. People may come and sell you a lot of weird interventions. So always make your research, always do your research. Make sure when you are looking for a practitioner, find somebody with competence, find somebody with credibility. If you look at my name right now, you would see a registration number. A lot of professionals right now, allied health professionals, that means your clinical psychologist, who can assist you in doing your testing, should actually already have a registration number or should be in the process of having a registration number. So you need to look out for these details to find professionals who are competent and who are credible, and they're not just someone talking just because they have wisdom, right? Wisdom that is not substantiated by their certification and licensing. So even if you're going to a counselor, right, for emotional regulation, your counselor needs to be licensed. So ask them for their license, ask them for the registration. And I think we should not be, as practitioners, we should not also be very like, why do you don't trust me? Is it? Yes, they should not trust you because they have no reason to trust you. They have no reason to trust us. They don't need to trust us. So we need to earn the trust by showing that we are registered, we are competent, and we are credible, and show them the proof for that, because there are a lot of fake services, fake professionals outside, and you want to be very, very aware of this happening. And when you choose interventions, you want to choose places where parents are invited to be part of it, because that ensures continuity at home. If a center or an interventionist tells you that, oh, you cannot come in, just trust us, I would have the alarm bells ringing. Why? I need to be there to see, because I don't know what you're doing. And how can I know what you're doing for me to do it at home? If I want that continuity, I won't know this. And inclusive intervention, very important. And very important on how they treat your child as an individual among others, right? Because that is very, very important in the long term. You want a place that treats your child with respect, treats your adult with respect, does not look at them as any lesser because of their different ability. And this journey comes with a lot of hours that you have to put in, a lot of emotional hours, a lot of hard work, a lot of hard-earned money. So you need to find a place that's sustainable for you so you can ensure that continuity for a long time. And also make sure you take care of yourself. So if you have any questions, I'm opening up a free 15-minute consultation with me to just give you an idea of whether you need to go down the route of the whole screening process. What do you need to look out for? And you just need someone to talk to just to see if you're on the right track. You can book a 15-minute appointment with me, and I will be happy to help you. And this is completely free. And you can share it with anyone you want, anyone you think that needs this 15-minute consultation, whether it's for you as a parent or it's for your child, doesn't matter. I'm here to help. So please do reach out. And closing words from us, it takes a village to raise a child, but having a child with autism raises your consciousness and raises the consciousness of the village. And I cannot agree more, because if I did not have my Varun is my son, if I did not have him, I would have taken so many things for granted. The ability to speak, the ability to connect, the ability to play, engage in pretend play, ability to love, all of this that I would take for granted, I do not take it for granted. I'm so conscious of every single thing that he does, every single thing that he says, and that has enriched my motherhood journey as well. And I'm sure it has also been life-changing for everyone who's come into contact with my son and my family. Right? So I would like to end with this, and thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Eileen, for your time. And before you leave, we would really appreciate if we could hear from you. Please take a few minutes to fill up the feedback form. So just so that we know what other topics to arrange for you to listen to, for you to tune into, what would be helpful for you as practitioners or parents or individuals living with autism. And that would be very, very helpful for us to craft our webinars and our info giving sessions, right? So again, thank you so much, Eileen, for joining us today. We really appreciate your expertise and your wisdom and your efforts, right? And those of you who have not followed us yet on Instagram, please do follow us. And if I could have everyone to switch on their cameras for a quick picture, would that be possible? You can also get all these links online on the chat box, right? If I could invite everyone to switch on their cameras, we could have a quick picture. I'm gonna just put the gallery view and have all of us in. Okay, I see a lot of my students. Hi, guys. It's like having a class. Okay, so Terrence, are you ready? We probably need to take two, because there are few windows. Terrence, let me know if you're ready, yeah? Terrence, where are you?
Hello, yes, hold on, just 1 second. Okay, 3, 2.
Okay. Are we doing the next page?
Yes. So 1 second.
Are you done?
3, 2, 1.
Thank you.
Yay, done.
Hi, thank you everybody for tuning in. We finished right on the dot. It's just 2 minutes before 9:30. So thank you so much. I did not think that would be possible. We had to skip some questions because of the lack of time. But if your question was not answered, please feel free to get in touch with us and we shall answer you in the session. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Have a great night. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Eileen.
Bye.
Bye.